actually have 3 campers who are going to talk tonight. So if all 3 campers, Gus, Stephen, and Ben, would please come up and take a seat on the stage. Who was here last year? Okay, let me do it another way. Who was not here last year? Raise a hand. Wow, that's phenomenal. Okay, so what we did last year, at this time, this evening last year, was we were so enthused by the campers, and what we saw as this agenda called Agenda 21, something that we see at the conferences we go to, and Alex Newman can verify this, is overwhelming year over year, conference over conference, more and more young people getting involved with the United Nations. For example, I went to a Salt Lake City conference just after Camp Constitution last year, and some of the topics with these young people were about depopulation. In fact, Alex Newman took one of my recordings of one of the United Nations directors for Africa, who said, when he was talking about depopulation and natural resources, so he was saying about what the human impact is on natural resources, and he said, the elephant in the room is population control. In other words, controlling whether or not people can have children. And how many children. So after the panel discussion ended, I went up to his name is David, and I went up to David, he is from Africa, and I asked him, you know what, you're the only one who I believe is brave enough to talk about depopulation. And he says, I know, and so I start recording the conversation without him knowing, and I probe him about what his plan is about depopulation. So if population is a problem for Mother Gaia, right, Mother Nature, then how do we solve that kind of problem was pretty much my question. And he laughs and he says, well, we cannot kill them all. Ha, ha, ha. We cannot kill them all. Extraordinary. Something that we've noticed year over year as these people who want a one world government system where you and me lose our freedoms and our liberties and our God-given rights, they're getting more brave about talking about their agenda. And something that is hugely missing for the freedom and liberty movement, for us, is our voice at these conferences. So last year, we decided, Hal and I talked about doing what we're calling the Agenda 21 Challenge. And before we get into the whole past year of engaging with these 3 gentlemen, for those of you who do not know about Agenda 21, we're just going to do a very brief overview. So with the raise of your hands, who has never heard of, may have heard of, but does not know very much about United Nations Agenda 21. Please raise your hand. So if you've heard of Agenda 21, you know all about Agenda 21, you're very comfortable about talking about Agenda 21, will you please, and here the key is, very comfortable about talking about Agenda 21, please raise your hand. Not very many people. And yet it is happening right now in this country. So what is Agenda 21? Simply put, Agenda 21 is based on some major documents that were put forward by the United Nations throughout the last several decades. And the problem with these documents is that our elected officials, their staffers, unelected official bureaucrats are following these documents. Briefly, the first one there is the United Nations Earth Summit Agenda 21. It's a 40-chapter document, about 300 pages, and it doesn't sound bad when you read it. But when you start getting into how they're going to implement these details, like getting people out of their cars because cars are bad for the environment, then it has you start thinking, wait a minute, What does that mean to me? What does it mean to my private property? The big document, I usually bring it with me. It's 1,147 pages. It's called the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report. I call it the Crook Book. Talks about all these things that are unsustainable. Power lines, anything that serves human needs, ponds, livestock, large-hoofed animals, ski runs, golf courses, scuba diving. Meat is unsustainable. So all these things, there's thousands of things that you and I enjoy every single day that the United Nations and this agenda called the Agenda for the 21st Century, United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, would have all those things disappear so that you and me and everyone else around the world can live what they call a basic lifestyle. A plant-based would be the food system, basic lifestyle. It's based on what they came up with called sustainable development. So everywhere you go now, you see things about sustainability. Sustainable farms, sustainable business, sustainable agriculture. You can't go a day without seeing the word sustainability or hearing the word sustainability in modern day society. So the old definition of sustainability, when we used to say something's sustainable, it just simply meant it lasts. It's built so good that it lasts, right? But not in the 21st century. It means something wholly different and definitely not based on our God-given rights. So in the middle you see of this figure here, you see the letters SD. That's sustainable development. So sustainable development happens where all these three things come together. Social equity. What is social equity? Even if you're very versed on Agenda 21, please share. What is social equity?
Communism.
What?
Communism.
Hal, what is social equity?
Sharing your stuff with other people.
Sharing your stuff with other people, and communism. Okay, economic justice. What's economic justice? Yes, sir. And distribution of wealth. Whose wealth? Our wealth, right? Especially the United States of America. Environmental justice. Go ahead.
Basically getting rid of anything that will harm the environment.
Right, anything that could hurt. Yep. Thank you, Andrew. Yep. In other words, rocks have rights. Rivers have rights. There's a river in New Zealand that has human rights. And when a rock or a river or an animal has human rights, what happens? What can that river, rock, or animal do? Sue you, right? So these are some very scary concepts, very foreign to how the United States, our founding fathers, built this great nation. And for those people who cry social injustice and racism, and I have a really, really probably non-PC question for them that I'm going to ask them now. If you did not get the founding fathers as the men, and there were women too in that movement, who created an opportunity for our future, which dictator did you want to conquer this land? Because if it wasn't our founding fathers, it would have been a dictator, because that's what happened to vacant land. How do you get to sustainable development? Well, they're stepping it up, and it's called the 2030 Agenda. And what you see here are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And within these 17 goals, there's 169 targets with sub-targets. So I invite you to look into the Sustainable Development Goals because they are being implemented here into the United States. Let me give you an idea of one of those Sustainable Development Goals. By the year 2020, we need to have the number of traffic accidents. How do you cut in half the number of traffic accidents? No more cars. Get people out of their cars. Here's another one. and I think that was the year 2020, it could have been 2030, but this is definitely 2020. By the year 2020, restore all river water bodies, whether it be in mountains or in cities or streams, which is why I believe the largest dam destruction project in worldwide history in my backyard in Siskiyou County, California, is underway. And you'll see newspaper articles coming out that they're going to be yelling, yay, we're going to destroy these clean, green, renewable energy dams. And the year that they wanted to do that was this year, 2020. It's not going to happen this year, but anyway. The other thing with these Sustainable Development Goals is they said we pledged no one left behind. The frightening thing as well is major businesses, McDonald's, Disney, Dow Chemical, major corporations that you and JP Morgan, that you and I hear of and see their logos every day, signed on saying they will help implement these Sustainable Development Goals. In other words, they said we'll help implement United Nations Agenda 21. The ultimate goal looks something like this. On the left is a map that Dr. Kaufman, who has presented here in the past, the former Dr. Kaufman, and he put the United Nations, that big cookbook that I showed you on the right, he put together data from that book and also the conferences leading up to that book and formulated this map. On the map on the left, you see red zones. Those are no human use zones based on the sensitivity of biodiversity. In other words, plants and animals and trees and fauna and flora. In other words, that those things were more important than human beings. Yes, God is just going, what? So, because aren't we supposed to be the steward of the land? We are. But this map shows that we can't go in those areas. The yellow zones that you see surrounding the red zones are limited to no human use zones. Mostly those zones government officials can go into. U.S. Fish and Wildlife can go into, pardon me. And the black areas that you see, the heavy black areas, are what we call the regions, the mega regions. Those are the areas that human beings get to live in the 21st century. Their goal, the year 2050. On the right here is a regional map plan of 11 regions that they are creating right now in the United States of America. So you nudge ranchers and farmers off their land by creating endangered species acts, clean water acts, regulations, fines, fees. We have to get permission to put a pond on our ranch these days. Soon we'll have to get permission to walk through the river that runs through our ranch. We have to get a permit. It's called a 1600 permit right now. So if you want to cross that river, if you have a tractor, you need to cross the river. We've got pasture on both sides of our river. My dad is supposed to get a permit, a 1600 permit. If we get a flood in the river, we have to get permission these days now to fix the banks on the river and put the river back the way the river was, but now we have to get permission. If you don't get permission and you're fixing the river or going through it, it could be fine, it could be jail, whatever they say. So this is a region, there's 11 regions, and you can see this top region called Cascadia in the upper left of this America 2050 map. By the way, this is their goal by the year 2050. It overlaps into Canada, you see that? Down at the bottom, the yellow one in Southern California, that overlaps into Mexico. And now you should be saying to yourself, no wonder why they don't want borders. You cannot have a new world order. You cannot have a government system when you have sovereignty. And each state in the United States represents sovereignty. In other words, we the people. But that's not the system that's being set up right now. And this is why you, each and every one of you, are so important in learning the value of the Constitution and your God-given rights, so that you can help us defend them. Just really quickly, to say that we're not making this up. This is George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 at the United Nations Rio Earth Summit, a press conference. Listen closely what he says here.
and we've had a very successful visit. We signed a climate convention. We've asked others to join us, presenting action plans for the implementation of the climate convention. We won agreement on forest principles. We found a warm reception among the G7 and many developing countries to our Forest for the Future initiative, and many U.S. proposals on oceans and public participation on the importance of economic instruments and free markets were included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration.
He goes on to say that the United States will be the leader in environmental action. So if that's not proof enough, fast forward to October 2nd, that same year. It's a Friday night, October 2nd, 1992. Oddly enough, 9:11 p.m. What were you doing on a Friday night at 9-ish p.m.-ish? My guess is you were not paying attention to what Congress was up to late on a Friday night. But my Congresswoman was busy.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 353, concurrent resolution expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit by developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H. Conrad 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution which the gentleman has just mostly explained. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. H. Conrad 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from
The idea behind this challenge was that we need more people to expose this agenda. If you were to go out on the streets right now and ask your neighbors or the people around here if they've ever heard of Agenda 21, the likelihood is they never have. And yet it impacts every aspect of our lives, even the air we breathe. And the interesting thing is, our elected officials refuse to talk about it. Why? You just heard a president and a congresswoman talk about it, but let me give you an example of how they will not talk about it. This is in Madrid. Alex and I were just at this conference in December. Here's a Congressman Gravali from Arizona, Jared Huffman from California. Oh, and here comes Miss Nancy Pelosi.
Can you comment about Agenda 21? That's H. Conrad 353. Why you went to the Rio Earth Summit, Nancy?
Maddening. It was her bill, and she refuses to talk about it. Guys, that's not the first time I've confronted her, or Al Gore. For each of them, I've confronted them 3 times now, and it's the same blank, nasty stares. Okay, so we need the young people to get involved, because you are the people that they're listening to. Look at Greta Thunberg. She's got the world stage. And Al Gore, many, many years ago, in this document for children called Rescue Mission Planet, declared that we needed a Mission Rescue Planet Earth monitored and surveyed with monitoring and surveillance by you, the young people. So we created an Agenda 21 challenge, and I'm going to go quickly through this. The idea of the challenge, and 10 people signed up for it last year. Let's give them an applause. And for whatever reason, they felt that they couldn't accomplish it. But I want to acknowledge each and every one of you for saying yes to a challenge where you had no idea where it was going to go. So it's to learn about Agenda 21 from Camp Constitution last year to Camp Constitution this year. Create a project, define goals, and work as a team to accomplish those goals. Be on weekly calls. They were hour-long calls every week. Participate on Zoom webinar calls were the calls. Provide updates weekly. Lead the calls. Actually learn how to lead a Zoom call yourself. I would hand over the the steering wheel over to these guys. And register and show up to this year's Camp Constitution in order to claim your $500 prize, right? You all remember that? So here's the GoFundMe page, and we ended up early on raising $4,525. Almost enough for all 10 who signed up to receive their $500. And thanks to Willie Soon, who really got active and got his friends to donate. My mom and sisters donated, but Willie really went to work and got a lot of donations, so applause to Willie. Calls, we had guests like Willie Soon, of course Hal Shurtleff, who joined us often, Alex Newman joined us, Patrick Wood talked about technocracy, a guy from Colorado, John Seville, talked about our personalities and where we'd be effective, and we all decided that we're introverts except for Stephen. And then we had Judy Vankovich from British Columbia. We watched videos on our calls on Agenda 21 on regionalism. We watched awesome video by Simon Sinek called Start with the Why. Really good, you gotta watch that. And then we checked out documents like this one. The Fraser Basin, British Columbia got in touch with me to ask me about an agenda and that they were asked to vote on. So we peeled through this document and look, here's some of the document that they were, as elected officials, supposed to consider and pass. Look at this one. This one blows me away. Settler education. Educate people about colonial history and systems and its injustices. This document goes on and explains what is sustainability. The term sustainability has evolved, important word. Over the past few decades, as a more contemporary version, they complement the United Nations, our common future, which is a United Nations document. And anyway, then they go into the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So we discussed this, and we got British Columbia on the phone to talk about what's going on to British Columbia, to share that what's happening here is happening everywhere. We created a log, and on these calls, by the way, these hour-long calls, we had elevator speeches. We practiced our elevator speeches, and hopefully Gus will, these guys might do all of theirs, but, and we worked on how do we turn conversations into Agenda 21 conversations. This is a log. We took a log of all the things, well, not all the things, but a lot of the things that we did, what we accomplished, and this is about a minute long of things phone calls, over 37 hours of phone calls that we did, the dates that we did these phone calls, and then each person went through and logged their accomplishments and what they did. Not necessarily their accomplishments, but things that they did. And so, you guys, I am so proud of these three. Can you imagine committing to something like this for a year? Just for $500. 37 hours of calls, actually taking what you learn out into your community. It's extraordinary. And it is. And while you're clapping, can you please clap for the parents of these kids? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gus and Stephen to share with you what they've been up to. So Gus, Stephen? Oh, by the way, for Gus and Ben, this is the first time they are giving a presentation in front of a crowd. So.
Hello, I'm Steven. I should talk into the mic. I'm Steven.
And I'm Gus. We are a part of an elite society known as the Agenda 21 Challenge.
So today we're just going to talk about sort of what we did, the challenges we encountered at trying to do our podcast, and everything we accomplished throughout the challenge.
But before that, I'd like to talk about how we got started. My family has been coming to camp as long as I can remember, and actually this is my 10th anniversary, but Steve's only been coming for like 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think it was 2018, I was taking a class, and Mr. Shirtliff came and he talked about Camp Constitution, and they gave us a test, and whoever scored highest on the test got a scholarship to camp. So it was me. Ironically, I only got a B on the test, but I still won, so I came here and I liked it so much I kept coming back.
As Mrs. Bacigalupi said, she did issue a challenge to inform people about Agenda 21, and our way that we did it was posting podcasts about Agenda 21.
So yeah, we've all ended up volunteering for that challenge, or accepting the challenge. And on September 23rd, as you might have seen on that little slideshow that scrolled down, we joined our first Zoom meeting.
So I was thinking, well, before the whole podcast thing, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a really long time. So I had a friend named Andy. He had a podcast studio, so I made a deal with him so that we could use a political podcast, for the challenge, and he said yes.
So we spent 4 months of hard work on about 8 podcasts, and they were all horrible. So we finally got the first one, and we were listening to it, and we decided to sort of scrap the idea of doing it with Andy, because he has a heart condition, so he had to quarantine himself due to COVID-19. So we decided to just get our own podcast equipment and do it from our own home.
Yeah. By then, I was just informing everybody around me about Agenda 21, and I had some harsh comments on my opinions. Very harsh, actually.
So only 11 months after the first Zoom meeting, we finally got the stuff and we set it all up, and we recorded our first podcast, which is out on SoundCloud right now. It's going to be out on YouTube as soon as I get back from camp. And we called it Truth from the Youth. You can find us on SoundCloud.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
So that was our introduction. I made a PowerPoint for my class around when the challenge first started. So I have that, and then I added a little bit to it. So Agenda 21, subheader, wait, what's that? So it's full of a lot of bad memes. So what is it? It's a global plan of action. The 21 refers to the 21st century. It was created in 1992 at the UN Summit in Rio de Janeiro. It's a 350-page, 40-chapter plan of action, and it's a global plan for sustainable development. So when I looked it up, like the week after I got home, someone described it as the collective process of the elite sticking their fingers into everyone's pies, which I did. So I divided it into 4 sections for simplicity. Section 1 details helping those in third world countries, stuff like population control, eliminating unemployment, maintaining world health. Section 2 is conservation of resources for development. They want $76 trillion. That's a real number they have for tree hugging. Section 3 is equality, which it sounds really good, but not the way you'd think. It's the demise of property and rural living, mandatory population control, and redeveloping cities, so it's basically communism. More summarization. Section 4, means of implementation. redistribution of wealth, which is just communism, monitoring your internet activity, which is just stalking, removing people from rural areas to conserve natural resources, which is just property theft, re-education, just propaganda, reconstruction of local governments, which is planting puppet leaders. So it's not just for third world countries. 27 years, I think it's 28 now, after Agenda 21, here's some ways it has affected America. People are being funneled into cities with the decline of rural living. So as a result of like all the traffic into these cities, the unemployment rate rises because they don't have enough jobs for everyone. And since they don't have money for cars, they have to only go where public transportation can take them. So the middle class is shrinking because many of them lived in the rural areas. And due to higher poverty rates, children are sent to free government-controlled public schools, which, as Mr. Newman said, is not very good. They're brainwashed into the Agenda 21 mindset, and the cycle continues. So how can you help? The most effective way to help is information, so attend town hall meetings, protest your local legislation for Agenda 21, and educate others, sort of like this. So I can sort of skip this part because originally I made this for my class, although I would like to point out how bad that haircut is. So Greta Thunberg, she's 17 now, Swedish pro-Agenda 21 activist. According to her mother, she can see CO2, which you can't. So I made this graph. It looks complicated, but it's not. The naked human eye is sensitive to, or I didn't make this graph, is sensitive to an approximate range of 380 nanometers to 760 nanometers. CO2's wavelength is 9,400 nanometers to 10,600 nanometers. If you don't know what a nanometer is, and that made no sense to you, just like me, just know that 760 is a lot less than 9,400. So clearly her mother is lying. Is it child abuse? Yeah. Yes. Greta is diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, high-functioning autism, and selective mutism. So are her parents taking advantage of a disabled child for personal political gain? Also, she calls it a superpower, being able to see CO2, which is interesting. So this is sort of outdated right here. Closing, if Agenda 21 is not stopped, the total global government could very well be achieved within the next generation. It's not actually the closing. I made this last night, so I just used an old presentation, so I have more. So I made this. Same presentation another year later, so. Oh yeah, that. What is Agenda 21? Again, Agenda 21, okay, I already said that. Conspiracy theory, not really, it's a conspiracy fact. So it's well that it's not technically legally binding, as it is not a law. It is propped up by Executive Order 12,852, which establishes like a committee on putting Agenda 21 into law. So yeah, Sustainable Development. So it's not a law, but it is controlling. So insta law, just add water. Executive Order 12,852. It was issued by Arkansas's most charming serial killer, Bill Clinton, and it establishes the PCSD, or President's Council on Sustainable Development. So he's exploited the system and expanded the government by using his executive order just sort of to create a law out of thin air. Unsustainable development. So you're here, you probably know what sustainable development is. So here's why it's unsustainable. Most people would define sustainability as good for the environment, but by that definition, cigarettes are sustainable because they can be recycled and can be made forever, but they also kill people. I'm done now. I made this.
Okay, so coming into this Agenda 21 challenge, I knew absolutely nothing about this topic, and throughout the whole journey, throughout the whole year, I've learned so much, but I'm still not an expert on the topic. There's still so much more to learn. So a lot of people ask the question, what is Agenda 21? Because most people don't really know what it is. I would say it is the document from hell, created in the Rio Earth Summit 1992, where it's the Sustainable Development Plan for the 21st century, and it's going to implement a communist form of government, controlling everything like how much CO2 you breathe out, how much oxygen you take in, all your private property is going to be stripped, human lives throughout the world will be fully controlled by these global elitists. And okay, so this is usually the biggest word that correlates with Agenda 21 is sustainability. It used to be such a great word where it would be taking something and preserving it for the next generation to be used, something that was great. But now they're going to be using it to promote their, oh, we love the green earth so much, we're trying to preserve Earth and get rid of more people. And here are the 3 spheres of sustainability. You've got economic, which is kind of making equal pay. You know, everyone gets the same pay. Environmental, as Ms. Bacigalupi said, rocks have rights. If you maybe grab a flower from the ground, the flower can sue you for assault. And social, like transvestites being able to go into bathrooms, women's bathrooms. And this is the regionalization of America, where you've got in the colored spots, there's 11 mega regions. Connected through all of them, the gray lines are railways that connect all of them, and they're going to get rid of all, maybe a little bit of public transportation, still going to stay there. And it's no more cars, only biking and walking with the railroads. So as you can see, the Gulf Coast and Arizona Sun Corridor, they seep down into Mexico. And this shows the one world order where they have one, when we sign up to be part of the United Nations, they will create one world order where when we sign up we get to be controlled by them, and they will get rid of borders. That gets rid of our constitutional rights, and that's why you can see the 11 mega regions are going to seep into Canada and Mexico. I guess Thomas will be very sad that he'll have to be taking us around the whole United States. And a big warning for us, mainstream news. You can't trust any of it these days, but you must read carefully, because sometimes it's right there. They're showing you their plan. It's all there. You just got to read very carefully. And here's a false hope. You can see in 2001, February 20th, 2001, they predicted that Mount Kilimanjaro is going to vanish by 2020 because of global warming. As you can see, that's not the case. We come to February 12th, 2020, and it's pretty snowy to me. In the community, I have found in my community in Salem, Mass, that they've completely gotten rid of plastic bags, which is not a good thing, because as you can see, when we use reusable bags, E. coli, salmonella can be grown in the bags, which is nasty. I mean, who would want to have that around? And you can go to bagtheban.org, and it's a website that has so much about why plastic bags are so good, and you can learn a lot from there. Biggest thing is COVID death rates. I mean, you got Italy with the highest, Iran and Spain runner-ups, and United States at a 0.5 death rate, which is very low, and you wonder why people are going crazy about it. It's only because why Italy is so high is because people have already had preconditions. They were dying from heart disease, diabetes and other stuff, and they have to report it as corona so they can get they can get more funding. Another big thing with coronavirus is the mask. We've got the great actress Alyssa Milano with her custom masks with over a dozen holes in them. And one experiment you can do is the degassing test. If you fart through your jeans, underwear, you're still going to smell the fart. I mean, how's a deadly virus going to come through that mask? I mean, and I've got a short video explaining how the oxygen levels are lower when you put on the mask.
That they're requiring us to wear pretty much everywhere we go. And I'm going to test oxygen level under a mask using an OSHA-approved air quality monitor that tests for oxygen levels, hazardous gas levels, LEL, CO, NH3, H2S, stuff like that. This monitor is bump tested every day. It's calibrated every 30 days. OSHA requires 19.5% oxygen to work in space. Look it up. Normal oxygen levels is anywhere from 20 to 21, right in that area. So I'm gonna do a little test here. I'm gonna put the sampling thing in the corner of my mouth, and I'm not exerting, I'm just standing here. So I'm gonna put it right here. That's going straight to the air quality monitor.
Okay, it picks up a 21 rate, and this is when he puts on the mask.
Yeah, don't worry. Do the same test goes in the same spot. You can hear the alarm going off. That means that there is a hazardous atmosphere. And we'll see what the levels are. 17.4. Yeah. 17.5. It's starting to go back up. Okay. So it's clear at 19.5. That's what is required to work in this space.
So now you know why the masks are killing you, and if you get a headache or anything, it's due to that. It creates a toxic environment for you where CO2 levels are going up, and you could get exhausted from breathing in your own heat. So to child sacrifice, in 1515, this is modern day Peru. The Inca tribe, they had a child sacrifice altar where they killed kids. And now, as you can see, I guess Planned Parenthood kind of got inspired by this to create their own building in the same way. And it's very sad that they're killing off the population, and that's part of the control. They want to limit population, have a smaller population, so then it's, I guess, the less warming on the earth. And more with control. This is in RFID tag. It's placed on almost anything that you purchase, and it goes through all these tag transponders. And if you don't pay for it, if you don't pay for an item, you walk through the usually those what do you call them, the security things, and it'll start going off the detector, and that's how they can track if their item has been stolen or if it's already been paid for. This is such a simple thing for companies and stores to keep track of their items, but will possibly be used to track your location and track wherever you're living and all your moves, as Dr. Nace said before. In China, for example, they have face identification where all your criminal history is recorded, and your birth, your birthday, your name, everything, and that's how they're going to track you on the street every day. Here we have WeChat. In China, actually, all social media is banned. This is one of the very few things that they're allowed to use, and when you speak out against China on other platforms, you could be serving jail time. And technocracy, that is what China is. It's not a communist country anymore. It is a technocracy where global elitists are using technology to control you, as like in face recognition, the tracking of RFID tags, and Patrick Wood is a very good person to go to. His website is technocracy.news to learn more about technocracy. And again, these are the kind of people that we're always up against, the mob that wants to get rid of God. and we will not stand down to them. We will not reach down to their level. So we need the younger demographic to start to fight back against these kind of people that don't believe in God, want a communist revolution, and also the United Nations. They just want to divide, and make everything smaller. That's why in China you see all those high rises. They want to slowly limit government, make everything so close together in walking distance, which is how they'll get rid of all public transportation. And Satan, we will not kneel down to this devil. The only man we will kneel down to is our Lord and Savior God. Thank you very much.
All right, all you three, stand up. Will you guys give these guys?
Well, we have something to present to them for all their...
Let me explain really quickly. You're going to see a difference, and you'll see how much they ended up getting, right? Because not everybody did the challenge. We bought a podcast system for these guys with the money we raised. So there was something that we did as a team. We set up some rules, right? And if you could only miss 5 calls. You had to be like on time. You had to be on time, and you had to be on, the calls. You had 5 opportunities, but you had to communicate. So with that, you'll see that there's going to be a differences in what they ended up getting. But with that,
Okay. The first one is Gus Kalis, $950. Now, if you want to take this to the bank and give me that envelope, I'm okay with it. Okay. And the second one is Steve Mauder for $1,000. And Ben Soon, $1,250.
the reason Ben got a little bonus. So the ultimate was $1,000 each, and then you heard that there were parameters. But Ben got a bonus because not only did he communicate that he would not be on a call with plenty of time for the team to know, but he was on time and he made every call where he didn't have a basketball game. And so anyway, Ben, your integrity is off the charts and deserved.
Okay, that concludes our class or our presentation.